Unpack a little bit what you see your role as a dad is to your boys.
My role I see is to raise sons that are by far better men than I could ever be. And it's a conversation I've already had with a kindergartner, right? Which the amount that he can understand obviously is pretty small, but I'm explaining to him, hey buddy, Daddy, why do you want me to do that? Well, buddy, I'm trying to teach you to be a better man than me. When you grow up, I want you to be a better man than me. And he literally just, no, Daddy, I don't want to be a better man than you. And just like hugged me and started crying. I was like, buddy.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 44 of the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Before we get started, if you have received any value from this podcast, if you received one piece of information that has helped, I would extremely appreciate if you told a friend. That is the one way that you can help this podcast and honor what we're trying to do in here, and also spread the message for other dads to be able to come home. There are dads out there right now in the military, either active or transitioned out, that are struggling. And if you know a struggling dad that needs a friend, that needs a message, that needs hope, please, from the bottom of my heart, please share this podcast with them. That is how this movement will grow. That sharing with that one friend could be the one episode that changes their life, that pivots them in a new direction. Next, I have been sick for the last week and with a sinus infection, and it's taught me one thing. As I'm just starting to recover today, I can't help but feel amazed of how much I love breathing. Not being able to breathe for a week and just pausing for a few minutes today and just breathing in and out has really made me appreciate the breath and how much it can be easily taken for granted when you can't breathe, like with a sinus infection. So oftentimes when we're overwhelmed, we don't necessarily know what to do. And today, because I was reflecting on breathing and appreciating it extremely much because I didn't have a clogged nose, that breathing is something that we often overlook as a tool to help us walk away from something, to de-escalate something. That deep breath in and deep breathing out helps us remove that emotion of what we're feeling. It's connected to meditation, but I'm not going to go into meditation. I'm just going to remind you today, when you need to pause, take that deep breath, breathe in and breathe out, and you'll instantly feel a little bit better. Do it again. Do it as many times as you need to. That breath can put space between whatever you're feeling and whatever you may need to do, or whatever you want to do, or whatever maybe you don't want to do. But that breathing can do that one thing, to put that one pause to get you to a place where you need to be versus where you are today. With today's episode with Adam, every dad is going to love this because Adam is a dad who absolutely loves being a dad. And it was actually one of the things he first said to me when I first met him. He's like, I can't wait to be on your podcast because I can get to talk about how much I love being a dad. Adam is a veteran, and he is a partner of Active Duty Passive Income. It's a company that helps active duty and veterans use real estate to create a passive income to either grow a life of freedom or to just, like the name says, create a passive income to allow different things to happen. And their tools allow someone in the military to create a passive income to allow a better transition, to create an asset of real estate to transition through with having that active duty passive income. He also has 2 boys, and the stories we share about 2 boys and my kids are just so, it was just a really powerful episode. And I was preparing for this episode to be released. I was just reminded of how great this episode was. So without further ado, let's get started with Adam, because I know you're going to love this episode. Hello, Adam. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
It's crazy. I've had a lot of crazy people on my podcast, not crazy in person, but crazy of how it's happened. Like that lunch table that we were sitting across randomly at the networking event at the Military Influencer Conference is the reason that we're here recording this episode. And you're getting ready to share a story that hopefully will bring a couple dads home. more of those have been happening over and over. It's like that one. I just interviewed a guy, Seth Castle. I found him because Google found his name with a children's book that he wrote for Why Dad's So Angry. And that was an episode that came to my attention just because Google put it in front of me. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. Let's start off with just telling a little bit about yourself and a little bit what your family looks like right now.
Sounds great. So my name is Adam Barr. My wife and I have two fantastic boys, amazing boys. One just started kindergarten this year, and the other one is 10 months old. So we have a very hectic household. They're 4 years apart, and they love each other ridiculously. It's fantastic to watch them play. My oldest son, he'll run around the house with his swords and start fighting me with swords, and then all of a sudden go over to his little brother and be like, "Oh, I love you, Rourke," and just give him kisses, and then come back and start fighting me again, But yeah, we're a family of four, thinking about whether or not we want to become a family of five and increase the tribe here.
Are you going to pick up the pace?
As far as
whether you're going to wait another 4 years,
if we do it, we're definitely not going to wait another 4 years. That's for sure. So,
was it a deployment, or would that put you a gap, or
no? It just life, just the way life worked out, and the way God decided to have it all work out. So.
I like that. And my son just entered kindergarten, and he's the middle son. So he's had his older sister in school now. How has it been for you with your son entering kindergarten on his own? Is he kind of a confident 4-year-old or 5-year-old? Is he timid?
So he's a little bit of both. So when he's around people he knows, he's super confident in himself, very excitable, very, he speaks extremely well. He knows what he's talking about. And then when you get him around somebody he doesn't know, he's like, whoa, I don't know. He's very, you can almost see him be on guard. He like watches what they're doing. He kind of stares them up and down, kind of figuring out what's happening here. But for the most part, he's good. He puts himself out there. He has a good time. We just had somebody over at the house today, actually, that we had no idea who they were. I mean, they came over to see our dogs, and he was at first a little bit shy, and then all of a sudden he broke out of his shell completely. It was awesome. It's something he doesn't usually break out that quickly. So I don't know if that's kindergarten helping him out, being around more people or what, but he's a little bit of both.
I think it's probably a little bit of both too, because my son's very shy. He's okay when he's comfortable, but when he's not, he's just super shy. He's kind of the kid that won't say his name to a stranger when you know the person that you're trying to introduce him to. He just kind of hides behind your leg. But something about kindergarten is almost like built up his confidence, so like he can do things on his own. And I can instantly see him growing up in this last month since school started, for just how he carries himself, how he figures things out, or even how he's just coming home and he knows something now that he didn't previously. Like there's things that he learns, but he takes them for granted that he learned them, but you can notice that difference. So it's especially when it's your first boy, or Dylan's my only boy and he's your oldest. Like there's just something about that first one, especially when it's your son, as he's starting to take those first steps to be the man that you hope he is when he turns 18. And it's really kind of where you start to see all the work that you put in for the first 5 years start to grow grow a little bit. It's a bunch of seeds in the ground. You've been watering the heck out of them. And that kindergarten is really where they take roots in kindness and friendship and lots of good stuff.
And it really, since I have another boy, it really makes me think, all right, well, now that I'm seeing this in the oldest boy, is there something like, if
I want to re-engineer,
can I re-engineer the younger one can I plant a different seed that'll grow a different way? And it's kind of like my own little science experiment, right? So, I mean, raising kids is borderline a science experiment anyways, because you
never know what you're doing.
Nobody is perfect. You don't know what you're doing. You've got to figure this out.
Every day this is the first day you're figuring it out.
And even now with the second kid, Facebook likes to remind us of where we were years ago. So, it's reminding me every day what it was like 4 years ago with our kid, because they're only 9 days apart. 4 years and 9 days apart. So I have very good reminders of how all of it's going. I'm like, man, I don't remember doing that with him at that age. I should start doing that with this kid too. You're trying now. I'm like, am I slowing down? Am I behind? Like today, I looked and we were feeding the baby, not quite baby food, but just about baby food. And I was like, what am I doing? Like give this kid some carrots and chicken. What is wrong with me? Did I forget that he's able to eat this stuff? So, it's just fun to see, even in 4 years, how much I've forgotten and where we were.
It's amazing how much you forget when you hit that reset button. I've always said like, you think you're ready for a kid and then your wife's pregnant and you're like, and then your wife's like, what the heck did you do to me again? And then you're going through, what did I sign up for? How did I decide I want to go through this again? And then the baby comes out and you're like, how did I convince myself to start over again? We were perfect. We had no diapers. He could get dressed in the morning and then bam,
here we are.
Reset button comes
again.
in.
Yeah.
It's amazing how easily you forget about that and only hold on to the highlight reel. Probably psychologically, because that's how you get through the day, is you let go of the bad stuff. I like that. Probably with your son, what I've noticed with Lillian, our youngest, is, and it's a good example of how like just coaching in general works, is that coaching, you're trying to follow someone in front of you. And your kids often will catch up super quick because they have someone in front of them to copy. So whether you're trying to or not, unless your son's modifying the behaviors that you don't want, he's probably just going to keep copying his older brother as far as what's right and wrong. And you have that good gap that your son's really starting to do things that are fun and exciting, not just boring. And so your 10-month-old is just going to just continue to try to keep up. Like that's what I noticed about Lillian, is she's just constantly trying to keep up with her brother and sister. And she does things so much faster than they ever did compared to Sophia, my oldest. It's crazy how all that works.
Yeah. It's, and it's fun to watch because they want it, like, you just watching the interaction between them. And the littlest one, only 10 months, but he's like staring and trying to figure out, well, how do I do that? Right. And I'm just thinking that's what's going to be happening when like the oldest Adam is climbing a tree and wanting to jump out of it. I'm going to see my littlest one over there going, I'm going to climb that tree too. And be like, whoa, 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 you know?
And that, yeah. And then one day it's going to happen and you weren't looking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's all part of growing up too. So one of my buddies, he's like, well, my first kid is, this really smart, really intellectual. The second kid, you kind of just rely on the oldest one to raise the youngest one, to be honest. It kind of is what it feels like, like.
And especially at your age, you've got that nice age. When Dylan was born, Sophia, I think, was like 3.5. And she was okay, maybe to like lay on the floor and entertain him. But definitely when Lillian came around, Sophia was able to be there. And now if we had a fourth one, you do eventually get to a point where they kind of can help. You're not just completely outnumbered, that they do help raise each other. And assuming you've raised them all well, they've got a good background to not kill each other when they're not being brothers and sisters to each other.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Yeah, that's the goal, is that they don't kill each other. And
they will always be some type of brother and sisters, but other times they'll play perfectly for an hour, and you're like, why can't we play like this every day? And other days it's like, bam, they're cutthroating. Let's go rewind a little bit. What was it like for you to hold your first son? What was going through your head when you became a dad?
So I'm going to back that up a tiny bit, because when I was maybe, and this sounds weird, but maybe when I was like 13, I was like, I cannot wait to be a dad. I just wanted to be a dad. I just saw, like, I just loved kids. I loved being able to, my niece was born a couple years after that, so I was able to help out with my niece while I was still in high school, and I absolutely loved it. And then, so I was always just waiting to find the right woman to get married to and have kids with. And, we didn't have kids until maybe it was 5 years after we got married. And then I was so excited, beyond excited, to even find out that we were pregnant. And I say that, that she was pregnant, right?
Yep.
So to have the kid come out, I was so excited, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was really excited. I was ready to cut the umbilical cord. I had all these stories of people telling me, you don't want to watch, you don't want to do this, just sit down and let her do her thing. And absolutely not. I was so excited to be in there and be ready. And I took the baby right from the doctor's arms. We helped clip the umbilical cord, and I was unbelievably amazed. My wife was amazing to watch work. It was like it was nothing for her. I mean, we were in and out of the hospital. She showed up. She was already dilated really well, ready to go. She was just a beast throughout the whole thing. So that made that much easier to just go, all right, thanks, honey, I got this. Grab the baby, go do the, wipe down with a towel. I was able to do the first bath. And one thing I would recommend, this is some people may or may not like it, but I highly recommend hiring a photographer. it was something that we weren't positive we wanted to do. They don't take pictures of anything they shouldn't be taking pictures of, right? So I mean, some of that stuff does not need to be taken pictures of, right? But I'm telling you, the memories that we got, the things that we would have never seen, me giving the baby giving Adam his first bath and being back there, and the looking at my wife's face. I mean, there was no feeling like it ever. And honestly, I honestly wasn't even nervous. I wasn't scared. I was just excited. Like, I knew that this is what I've wanted for so long. And then I was finally a dad to a boy, and I was the last LeBar until now. So if it wasn't, for me having two boys, there would be no more LeBars. So it was a weight off of my shoulders as well. So it was an exciting time.
I know that feeling. Till Dylan, I was the last Kaloi in a long lineage that I am aware of. I was the only one left to bear it on. Did you know you were having a son?
Yeah, we found out, I think around the 3 or 4 month mark, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Okay. There was, did you find out with the second one as well?
So we did, apparently, because it's a cool thing to do, the reveal party.
The reveal party.
So, yeah, one of our friends said she wanted to do that for us. So we were like, all right, yep, let's do it. So we ended up doing a reveal party. So we found out for the first two. And for the third one, we already had one of everything. So there was really no financial benefit of knowing. So we were like, why not just wait and find out? And I realized something that very few dads, I think, put together, and maybe me because I'm an emotional crier, it kind of was just more. But when you find out separately, like in the ultrasound and the birth, when you separate those moments, you're somehow robbing and dividing that emotional impact. And when you find out together, it's almost a completely overwhelming. I cried for Lillian, but I really didn't cry for the first two, because you're finding out that it's a girl, and then you're looking at your wife, and then you realize how much you love her. And that whole moment is just overwhelming, but in a good way. And it was something I really didn't realize, that by separating it and finding out the sex, you financially gain something, but emotionally you take away from something in that moment when everything becomes real. And this person that you're holding in your arms is now real. And that emotional impact really got me with Lillian when she came out. I remember that moment very vividly in my head. And I remember the other two, because the first one was a C-section. The second one was a natural birth. But it wasn't like, even Dylan being a son, somehow I robbed myself of that moment of knowing that first son in my hands, because I already knew that it was a boy. Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I never really thought about it that way. That's something
to consider if you go for the family of five.
Certainly. Yeah,
although you still have that, you don't have one of everything aspect yet, though.
That's true.
But you can roll the dice in Vegas. I'm not sure if you're a gambler, but if you're, you got a 1 in 2 chance of getting it in there.
That's a true story. I mean, technically, I think it's a 51-49 chance, somewhere around there. But it does seem like a 50-50 chance with it being one boy, one girl. But
so as your son started being raised, how did you start to define your role as a father to your boys? When you're in your head, like, when you thought of the responsibility that you carried. And I can imagine you've thought about this, I think, because the way that if you've been thinking about it since you were 13, you were recognizing what the role of dad meant. And you probably had a very solid dad to help give that example. So unpack a little bit what you see your role as a dad is to your boys.
My role, I see, is to raise sons that are by far better men than I could ever be. And it's a conversation I've already had with a kindergartner, right? Which the amount that he can understand obviously is pretty small, but I'm explaining to him, hey buddy, Daddy, why do you want me to do that? Well, buddy, I'm trying to teach you to be a better man than me. When you grow up, I want you to be a better man than me. And he literally just, no, Daddy, I don't want to be a better man than you. And just like hugged me and started crying. I was like, buddy, that's a really good thing. Every dad should want their sons to be better men than them.
Yeah.
And like, my whole life obviously changed. I always knew I wanted kids, but until you have them, you don't have them, right? So there is no life-changing experience until
it's all just what happens. Hallmark movies make you want to believe about.
Oh, completely, right? Yeah. I mean, and some of it is true. Some of this Hallmark stuff is true, but at the same point, there's a lot of terrible things that happen when you're a dad.
Yeah. And there's a lot of terrible things that you're responsible to make sure never happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But so my mindset started to shift. I started to understand, all right, well, now not only am I taking care of a wife, I'm taking care of a son. Right. And I'm also a Christian. So I have to look at, how does the Bible want me to raise this child? What should I be doing what kind of church should I be raising him in? What kind of things should I be saying to him? But do we have things in the house that are supportive of all of this? Am I representing my life the way I want his life to as that example for him? And it really, everything started coming into play. Like I just had to overthink everything and just kind of, okay, well, what about this? Well, all right, well, if we talk to him about, those little lies that we give kids, no big deal. We're just trying to help mold them. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that because I don't want to raise my child to think that it's okay to just have these little lies because they're no big deal. Like, no, I'm going to tell you the truth, bud. Like this, sometimes we just have to do things because it's life and that's what it is. And I wish I could think of a quick example off the top of my head, but there's been multiple times where I just have to, my wife and I have to discuss and say, hey, this is where it's at. And making sure that the two of us are on the same page before we talk to him, before we talk to them now, and say, hey, mommy and daddy, this is what we say. This is what we're doing. This is where we're at. We're one team going through this. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that. And I think the only way that we have is because we started really early. My mindset was already there to be a dad. And now it's like, all right, well, what does it take to be a dad? And I analyze everything. So I analyze the process of what is it going to take to be a dad. And that's constantly in analysis and constantly in flux. And, well, what about this? And what about that? And, how do
me and you are going to be great friends.
And I love it, right? I really love it. I mean, I invest in apartment buildings and I analyze apartments, right? Because that's my job is I like to analyze. So my son is my little apartment that I have in my house. How am I going to analyze this thing to get the best return on investment that I possibly can? And I want him to be the best he can possibly be. So if that means that I've got to suck it up sometimes and do stuff I don't want to do, well, guess what? We're dads. That's what we do. Like, that's what it is.
Was there an area that you started looking at that you realized that you had to change when you became a dad, that you didn't have it in check?
I know there was multiple things that I didn't and still don't have in check. I think that, so one thing for sure would be like spanking, right? That was one thing that I don't necessarily have an issue with it as long as it's used properly, because there is abuse and abuse really upsets me. So it was, for me, I had to sit there and go, all right, well, I understand spanking. I understand the concept. I understand how we can work this. And then I did it one time and I about fell apart. He was having a hard time. I think he was either 2 or 3, but he was having a hard time controlling his emotions and he just started smacking his mom. And I spanked him on his bottom and told him that is unacceptable. And then, of course, he cried. And I thought to myself, you hypocrite. Like, you just did exactly to him what you are telling him not to do to his mother. Like, he doesn't know the difference. He can't see it. Like, what is wrong with you? He has no idea.
The conflict that you introduced into that moment for him.
Yeah. And, like, I literally fell apart. I started crying. I didn't know. Like, I talked to my wife about it. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like that. Like, I cannot do that. I cannot do it. Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, and there's still conflict with that sometimes because there are things that they do that you're like, well, this is one of those things that a spanking probably makes sense for. You know what I mean? And then I have to go, no, I have to be like, I don't want there to be that conflict in his brain the way there's a conflict in my brain. So I can handle the conflict because I'm an adult that can process these feelings and understandings. And I have to impose that understanding to him. And it's still a constant battle. Not that I'm running around going, I just want to smack my kid, right? No, but I mean, there's other things in life that happen with kids, and you're just like, this sucks, and I don't know how to deal with this, like, and
it's when your bucket gets empty, and you're scraping the bottom for even energy to deal with whatever is currently going on. And the one thing so there's been a few times where it's happened for me, and usually where it happens the most is when they're arbitrarily just laughing to death about something, but in a bad way. So like you're trying to punish them and they just consistently find it funny. And it's like the opposite of what you're trying to do. You're trying to like introduce sadness to them so that they would calm down and reflect. But in the other way, they're just finding it's funny. And you almost like the spanking is almost like a knee jerk to smack them back to the other side of the spectrum. And what I have done, the one thing that always helps me walk through it, because I do have the same guilt that you're like, you do it and then it's like, oh man, that is you at the end of the night, depending on their age. At 2, they might not remember, but if it happened at like 4 or 5, I always apologize for anything that I reacted and didn't do right. That apology at the end of the night is almost more powerful than my mistake, because then that says that you can make mistakes as a person, but reflecting on them and asking for an apology or a forgiveness is just as powerful of a lesson for a kid to learn as it is to learn not to hit.
Yeah, I try to do the same exact thing. Like, I remember one time vividly, my son was sitting on my lap. I was trying to talk to him about something. He just kept with this toy. And I said, you need to leave the toy alone. We're talking right now. And he kept bouncing the toy off my knee, and I grabbed it and just threw it over on the side. After how many times do we tell our kids not to throw things in the house? And then I take his toy and toss it over on the side and say, no, Daddy told you to stop playing with the toy. And then right that second, the second it came out of my mouth, I was like, again, you hypocrite. Like, what are you doing? So we finished that conversation that we needed to have. And I said, hey, bud, Daddy is very sorry. I should not have thrown your toy. I am sorry. I did not control my emotions the way I tell you that you need to control your emotions. And that's something Daddy shouldn't have done. And he gives me this big old hug and a kiss on my cheek. And one thing I always try to do when I'm talking to him is, and now it's become such a habit and he's getting bigger, so it's a little harder, but I like to bend down to his level, right? So I bend down to his level. And when he was a little bit smaller, he'd always sit on my knee and we'd have a talk, right? And I just say, hey, bud, let's talk about it. Because I don't want him looking up and feeling that fear of looking up at Dad. You know what? Like, I just want to eye to eye. Let's chat about it. And he'll come and sit on my knee. And now when he's a little bit bigger, he'll come and sit on my knee and about knock me over. And like, I don't have that balance anymore the way I did. But and I felt that connection, bending down and that eye to eye, has made life so much easier for both of us. And I'm able to just look at him and be like, hey, buddy, we can stop crying right now. Let's just talk about what happened. We move forward. And, you know, I've had a lot of life experience that has helped me learn how to control my emotions and learn how to control things. Doesn't mean that I'm perfect by any means. But we all go through things in life, especially military folks go through things in life that people will use to say that that's why they don't have patience or why they don't have anything. But really, if we flip the script on it and say, this is why I can have patience. This is the reason, like, you know, we have experiences that we've gone through, even if it's just Air Force basic training, right? Which of all the branches, everybody gives the Air Force a hard time, right? But even if it's just Air Force basic training, you're learning how to cope with situations you've never dealt with. You're learning how to shut up and color. You're learning how to face adversity. You're learning how to control what's happening around you as best you can. And then all of a sudden later on, we turn these things into, well, you know, I'm just tired of dealing with all of this. Like, it's all just adds up. Well, yeah, it does. But use all of that stuff that helps you have that patience again, helps you have that understanding, helps you to be able to help control the things that are going on around you. It helps to be able to think through those things and have that mindset shift with kids, because they're going to put you through things that you never thought you were going to go through. The other day I was supposed to get on a call with one of my partners, and I was like, hey man, I'm totally going to be late. It was just, my wife was gone on a trip, and it was just me and the 2 boys, and neither one of them were happy with anything that was happening. There was just screaming in the house. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to cook dinner. They're both fine. Neither one of them are actually hurting. I'm just going to cook dinner and we'll be fine. And what do you know? Just like normal men, you put food in their belly and they're happier again, right? So I just had to, hey, this is life. This life sucks. One is running around the house crying. The other one is in a bouncer just freaking out. That's okay. I have to sit here and learn to suck it up.
I'm not sure which thing to highlight there. You dropped like 4 or 5 bombs there. The last one reminded me, just a week ago, I had a Dante's Inferno night. My wife was out with some friend. The kids were just melting down. We had problems, everything just from behavior to, my youngest was just super frustrated that her underwear were too big, and she had to find the small ones, and she was going to burn the house down if she wasn't going to find smaller underwear. It was literally, everybody was crazy. And eventually I got to the point we were doing bedtime talk, and I just closed door and locked the two girls out, and they were screaming in the hallway. And I was just sitting there with Dylan, and I was like, they're gonna be fine out there. They won't kill each other. They'll get their time. But by the end of the night, it was all back to normal, and it was back to a quiet night. And I like what you said about using the experiences of, and this is what I think military dads leave on the table so much, that we have so much life happen to us, and to reframe it to happen for us, that we have so many experiences. We have an accelerated life within 4 years that most people don't even live within their entire lifetime. And that's just a big, giant Craftsman toolbox of wrenches and special sockets that you don't know what they're used for, but when you know you need it, you'll know you have it. And that's what we have the ability to help gift our kids to live a so much richer life with that toolbox. Even if you had the most traumatic PTSD incident in battle, all of those things are life lessons that if you retool it and just put it away in the toolbox for that day, there's going to be a moment where you're going to be able to teach your kids something about what happened, and it's going to give it purpose. And then you're going to be like, man, what would I have done without that experience of something happening? And it's my biggest epiphany with this podcast has been, as veterans, we get hung up on the legacy of our service instead of the legacy of our family. And it's that toolbox that really helps create and craft that legacy in a way that no other dad can do it. And I'm convinced that military dads, we have the best chance to make the biggest dent in the universe with our kids because of what we've experienced. I mean, it's just uncomparable to the amount of life that someone in the military experiences in just 4 years, even if you did 20 there, and we just get hung up on that service. And I want to highlight one last thing that I think is almost a secret weapon of a nuke for parenting, is bending down to their level. Because when you're at your level, you're threatening and you're very intimidating, and they're going to be very timid in how they respond in a fearful way. I can't tell you how many situations I've diffused when just getting down there and like rubbing their back and just kind of holding them while they cry to let them process whatever they're feeling. Like that can be, if that's one thing that you pick out of this podcast, just go and try it, because if you've never tried it, it is literally a game changer. Just keep doing it and you'll start to see those benefits. And I wish there was like one thing the hospital piece of advice gave you as a dad, because there's no good book. But man, that one piece of advice, just always be at their level, no matter what age they are. Even if they're a teenager, where you're not going to bend down, but mentally go to their level. You can take the same analogy to, I've heard it said that like as adults, we often tell our teenagers that these aren't real world problems. These people that you don't care about, or these people you care about, aren't going to matter in 4 years. But if you turn it around, this is their entire world. But you telling them it doesn't matter, it just like invalidates who they are, and they almost get lost in who they are, versus like trying to empathize what it's really like for them to have their entire world shattering for whatever first world reason. That analogy of getting down to the level, no matter what age they are, that is some brilliant advice that I've really used, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because every dad needs to hear that advice.
You know, I mentioned earlier that I'm a Christian. One of the guys I listen to a lot is Mark Driscoll. So Mark Driscoll is a pastor. Used to be at a church up in Washington. Now I think he's in Arizona or something. But I was listening to one of his, is a podcast or a book or something like that, and I heard it on there. And it was before Adam was even able to talk anything. And I was, again, constantly analyzing, constantly trying to learn. So I was always trying to pick out these different things that I can do. And I was like, man, like he talked about the psychology behind getting down to their level and all the different things. And I was like, man, that makes so much sense. And then even as a teenager, right, standing face to face can be threatening to a teenager. So having that seat just at a table, right? Let's just sit at the dinner table and chat about it. Let's go sit on the couch and chat about it. Because that's in a way getting you both on the same level. Right? It's not an aggressive posture. There's no tones involved, especially when dealing with boys. It makes a lot of sense with dealing with girls, right? Don't get me wrong. But when you get into those teenage years, not that I'm there yet. So this is, obviously just based off of my own research, not my own experience, right?
It's your own theory.
Yeah. And being a prior teenage boy, there's testosterone there that you're not expecting to come out, right? And then all of a sudden it does, and you're like, "Well, oh man, like that was a whole lot of testosterone that just came out there." And you're like, "Well, if we're sitting down on the couch, we're sitting down at the table, That's getting back the same thing as with my kiddo now. I'm getting at their level, getting myself there. Let's have this chat. Let's get through these problems. And I think that what you mentioned there is remembering that the monsters that your child has in the closet right now are very real to that child, just as much as getting in that argument and losing their best friend in junior high or high school is very real to that child. And dismissing it is the same as dismissing the child, which is why I'll talk through my son's like, all right, so, I'm afraid of the dark. No, you're not, buddy. Why do you think we're afraid of the dark? And just saying, no, you're not, is already setting the stage for
invalidating
a
what
bad
they're feeling.
thing, right? So I try to change it to be like, well, why are we afraid of the dark, bud? And then it walks through it, be like, well, what's in the dark? Well, the bed and this and that. I said, all right, what's in the light? And he'll describe it all. And then I'm like, all right, so if I shut the light off, it's the same stuff in here. And, helping him to walk through this process of the dark is nothing to be afraid of. And that goes to the other thing that what do I need to work on? Well, I need to always work on that psychology of a kid, because I don't, it's been many, many moons since I was a kindergartner. So, not that I would ever remember being a kindergartner that much, to the point of being able to understand what he's thinking. But I'm constantly trying to put myself in his brain to figure out, what can I say? What am I doing that is going to harm or help this child? And how can I continue to make him a better man than me?
How old are you, Adam?
34.
34. So I'm 35. And an easy way that I explain this to my daughter, who's 7, I have to remind her of this. And I was like, how you're trying to figure out how to be 7? And she's like, yeah. Well, I'm still trying to figure out how to be 35. That we're both imperfect people trying to figure out imperfect worlds. And that's often what you need to remember when you're going through that. Like, they're still trying to figure out how to be 7, just like you're trying to figure out how to be 34. And there's like just some like equal playing ground. You're both at the same disadvantage. You don't know how to live tomorrow because you've never lived that age before. And you always just have to keep going. You're just at different stages of the game. But have you ever, one thing you reminded me of, I just started this book, so I can't give a full review, but I think that you would like it being an analytical guy. Have you ever read the book, Never Split the Difference?
Oh, I love that book.
I just got started on it. I think I'm going to love it.
That book. It is
I could see it in your mind. I was like, this guy, I feel like he's read like FBI negotiations with kids, because they kind of talk about that, of like how you frame your question to get them to answer in a way that's proactive for them, not just you.
Yeah. And negotiations happen everywhere. Like in the book, he's obviously talking about a bunch of hostage negotiations with terrorist groups, but he also mentions that you're negotiating with your kids all the time. Right?
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like you're negotiating with terrorists when you're talking to your kids.
There's a hostage negotiation somewhere in that whole mix, right?
Yeah,
even if it's my sleep as the hostage, I don't know, but or
if it's cleaning up your toys, you're like, who's the parent here?
But yeah, great book, and it. You can actually use some of those tools as a parent to get your kid to do things. It's crazy.
So one thing we talk about in a lot of the podcast, and I'm going to take a guess based on where your mindset is, that you've surrounded yourself with a community of men to not just isolate yourself in the world, but to do life with. Is that a true statement?
Yes. First off, I'm in active duty passive income. The team that I'm a part of there is a bunch of dudes. And we have women on the team who literally help run the ship. If it wasn't for them, we would, who knows where we would be, because they just like the household. My wife makes this household run. I just act like I'm the leader of it. We have magically surrounded the 5 of us guys with fantastic team that is really taking care of us. But all 5 of us, we all have or look forward to having families. We're all married. We all have some of the same goals and aspirations. We all want more for our life than we have. And I'm going to church constantly. I mean, I just moved, so I'm finding a new church to plug myself into, to find other Christian men to stay next to and follow and understand from. And I think that is a extremely important thing, is to have a good group of solid men, not the men who or the boys who we went out drinking with, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between Private Snuffy, who you were drinking with, 10 years ago, and John, who's really going to help you out with a problem. There's usually a large difference. So finding the good, solid men to associate with and have conversations with, I think is huge.
One of the very first quotes that stuck with me was, I'm sure you've heard of it, you're the average of the 5 closest people in your life. Yeah. And I can easily tell that your average pushes you to dream bigger for your life. Like the men that you're surrounded with probably have a never settle mindset. And a lot of men today have a subtle mindset that this is my reality, that it's a very fixed reality, and I have little control over changing my future. But you surround yourself with people that invalidate that reality every day to push yourself to dream bigger. And what I say in the podcast a lot is to give yourself a wider view of the American dream, of what's possible. And that's what your passive income allows you to do. It allows you to build a freedom of your own life. And it's sad, but true at the same time, that the American dream is filled with car payments and student loans and a mortgage that you can't afford and a job you hate. And at the same time, we have we have freedom that somehow you ended up with that slave of money. On the other side, you're creating a life of freedom that freedom allows you to have almost limitless choices and to create a life that is without boundaries. It's really whatever your mind can dream up. You truly could snap your fingers and that potential could come true. So when you think of the word freedom, what comes to your mind as far as what you're aiming for when you think of that word?
Boy, there was a lot there.
Now you know how I felt when you gave your little wheel there.
So freedom means more, and obviously this is an individual thing, but we're targeting, obviously the podcast targeting military folks, right? And we have a mindset on what freedom is based off of what our experiences have been in the military and why we joined the military, because we're fighting for freedom, right? That's the goal of the military members, to fight for freedom. So you either fought or are fighting if you're a military person going through this. So freedom is for the military mindset is oftentimes so that we could do what we need to do in America and be, the land of the free, home of the brave, to be able to have the freedom to do whatever we want. But yet a lot of the military doesn't do whatever we want, right? We do what you said. We get stuck in our thing. Well, I can't because the military says this, or I can't because I don't have the money for this, or I can't because, and we always find the reasons that I can't. And I'm going to use an analogy here that I actually just recently heard that I really like, is all of those I can'ts, and I'm kind of paraphrasing how the analogy works. I'm creating it my own here. All of those I can'ts to me are like big rocks or logs in a river. And what we need to be is be the river. The river doesn't care what those rocks are. They find a way around it. The river doesn't care the logs that are sitting in there. They find a way around it. And the river is constantly going to flow. If the river gets some rain, it literally may take cars away. We all have the ability to take cars away. All right. Instead of getting stuck in a rut and just saying, nope, there's a car in my way, I can't move it. We have the ability to bring folks around us who help bring enough rain to push these cars out of the way, to not care about the rocks in the river, to not care about the tree that fell down in front of it. We say, yep, that's a tree in front of us, but I'm getting through it. I'm making it around. And to me, I want the freedom of being the river, that no matter what comes at me, I'm able to get around it. And that is something that money can't buy. That's something that only your mental freedom can help you buy. Mm-hmm. So if you have the mental freedom to be that river and flow through no matter what is going on, make it around any obstacle that's in its way, and make it through the other side to get to the ocean, right? Of the actual freedom that we all want, is to be able to be free and do whatever it is we want. If we want to go on vacation with our family on summer vacation, we can. If I want to put my kid in the best private school in the country, I'm gonna. If I want to buy my own private jet because I like to fly, well, I'm going to do that too, right? So obviously some of those are drastic dreams, but we can make them a reality because we allow ourselves to be around those 5 people who help build us up and get us there, instead of those 5 people who bring us back to the bar again, those 5 people who tell us that, oh, well, it's just good enough. You need that, at least that $20 an hour job. It's those 5 people that
it's
drag
the
us
safe
down.
route.
Yeah, you've taken the safe route, get yourself this, get yourself that, make sure you have your job security, blah, blah, blah. that's a mental barrier that a lot of people fall into. And I want the freedom of that river flowing through in my brain as well as in my finances. And I work hard for it. I put myself around people who work hard for it to make sure that no matter what, we're not failing. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And that it's never really failing as long as you have someone to help pick you back up. And if you do fail, your analogy really reminded me of the Dave Ramsey analogy that if your budget doesn't have any room for any additional savings or to kill your debt, he describes, well, you put a piece of TNT into the log jam in the river back in the day when the logs weren't flowing down, and you blew up the logs and the logs would start flowing again.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, like if the water is literally damming up in your river, a piece of TNT sometimes is the best way to reinvigorate and to start it over again. There's you ever watch Suits on USA? Yeah. I always love how Harvey Specter, he said it like early beginning when Mike came in and he's like, I'm out of my deck doesn't have any, I don't have any more hand in my deck. And he's like, when the cards on the table aren't what you want, here's what you do. You flip the table and you start over. Like you just throw the rule book out there and you start over. And like, it's the same kind of idea. Like if you don't like the rule book that you're playing life by, just flip the table and rewrite it. Like, and Dave Ramsey talks about the biggest lesson he learned when he hit bottom after losing all of his millions and having those banknotes recalled is he learned that there was a bottom and all he had to do was stand back up. And now he's got a dynasty almost. I would say he's at dynasty level right now.
He's got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it Charlotte? What was her name? Charlinda was at the MICDC. She's like, I think it was Charlinda, Air Force veteran. But she spoke on the stage. She says, and you know what? Even if I hit bottom, I know my bottom as a trampoline.
Yes, that was Charlene. Yep.
As long as you can bounce back up. And I tell my son all the time, he's, Daddy, I didn't do that. I didn't do it right. I said, well, did we fail? He said, yes. And I said, okay, what did you learn? So I don't care if you fail. You could fail 100 times. I said, as long as you learn and you fail forward, then I want you to fail as much as you can. Because we have this concept in our brain that failure is just like a terrible thing. And it's bred into us from the beginning, right? From school all the way through, failure is terrible. And I disagree.
You literally get labeled as an F for a failure. And as parents punish them for learning something they're not good at generally sometimes maybe.
Now, there are some times that you need to be punished for failure, right?
Yep.
Because sometimes you're doing it out of anger. Sometimes you're doing it out of you're giving up. And we just have to have that conversation. Like, all right, well, you failed. That's okay, right? You have a skinned knee. Did you bounce up? All right. How did you fail forward? Did you learn something? So the next time, and I had a bunch of my partners here from the ADPI team at my house. We had just a ADPI get together. Like, hey, let's chat about the forward business and blah blah blah. And they were able to see me be in dad mode, and I am obsessed with being a dad. It is by far like the favorite thing I've ever done in my life. It's the best title I've ever had. It's everything about it I love because I'm literally forming hopefully a future better than me, right? Or he will be, not a hopefully. He is going to be a future better than me.
Or a mini me that you just love hanging out with.
Oh, exactly, right? And that's perfectly fine too, right?
That's the best case. You're 65 years old and you create a son that you just love going fishing with, and that's like your favorite day.
And he, so I sit there and I watch him, and I'm like, all right. So if he says something or he does something, and I'll break it apart for him into little, kindergarten sized pieces. So all right, well, this is you did this. Did you see how that affected the next thing you did? And I try to break it apart, and the guys are giving me a hard time all the time. They're like, dude, this kid's gonna be like the most analytical kindergartner in the world. And I'm like, but he's thinking through his problems. He's thinking through this stuff, and maybe he's not. Right? Maybe he's not, but that's my goal, is that he actually thinks through these. Well,
you got to put in the reps for something to get better. Yeah. That's a big thing that I've learned even with this podcast.
If I'm not sowing the seeds, then I'm never going to get to harvest, right? So he's never going to get to harvest if we're not sowing the seeds now. So
quote that you would love is legacy is planting seeds in a garden you never get to see grow.
Yeah, I do love that. Yeah, that's good.
Because there's the thought
I really hope I get to
every day that you never know what's going to work and what's not going to work, or at what moment or what age does it click that you're like, or when you see your daughter and you're like, that just clicked.
I get it now. Yep.
I get it. I like what you said about failure, and I think for a lot of even adults that failure goes back to our monkey brain that 3,000 years ago, our mind kept us safe from lions, tigers, and bears. And the fear of death almost kept us safe. And that mechanism inside our brain kept us safe from being alive. But now we don't have lions and tigers and bears, but everything in life is compared to lions and tigers and bears. Mm-hmm. And so many things that actually have no repercussions often are the things we stop doing because our brain says we like it where we are. We're nice and warm and comfy. Even if we're miserable, we're warm and comfy. And it keeps us safe, but also normal, but then also just not ambitious. We just stay. And men need to grow. We need that inner desire to grow, but our monkey brain just keeps us still. And so the last thing, and I think for me, fear was a huge thing holding me back for most of my life. And now I'm to the point where a friend of mine gave me this that I almost repeat too often now, but starve your fear. That when you feel that fear, like try to starve it, try to move past it. And one of my first Chloeisms was, if you're at the wall of fear, find a door and walk through because your destiny could be on the other side. And I actually measure when I should do something by the more that it scares me. So the more something scares me, generally there's more something amazing on the other side that my brain's trying to keep me safe from. So as long as I'm not going to die from it and it's super scary, I generally run towards it because that usually means that that's something that my brain is protecting me from that I really need to do and to get outside my comfort zone. And I try to integrate that with my daughter as well, of trying to do new things and try new things and get past that fear because she's an emotional 7-year-old. So everything becomes an emotional basket case for her, no matter what it is. So just trying to get her through that can be a battle, but all we can do as dad is try and have conversations, and being aware of it is almost just the first step, and keep talking about it and see what sticks, see what doesn't stick, and keep the R&D lab open and keep figuring it out.
Absolutely. And you have to have the right people to talk to it about too, right? Because if you're staying in an echo chamber of people who all have the same mindset as you're going to stay in that same rut, and you're never going to get past that. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're blessed to still be with, your spouse, learning to have those conversations with your spouse, because that's the partner you really need to be on the same level with in raising a child. So having that conversation, sitting down and understanding and building off of each other, and hey, we're not in agreement on this. Let's find outside counsel to figure out how this works. That doesn't mean marriage counseling. I mean, it might for some people. I don't know, but sometimes you just need to say, hey, let me ask who are the best parents we know. That might be your own parents. That might be your buddy because you see how amazing he is. Who's the best parents I know? Let's call them and have this conversation with them. And, if you're going to the best parents then that's probably in that list of those 5 people, right, that you want to be around when it comes to parenting, right? So I think that that's a critical part, is being able to ask those questions. Like I'll call my mom still without any problems at all. That doesn't mean I'm going to listen to everything she says. It doesn't mean that I'm going to take all of the advice, but it's good to have that understanding of, hey, mom, like when you went through these situations with me, where did you end up? How did that work? Can you describe some of that to me? And listen to the advice, figure it out, analyze it, and then understand what you need to apply in your situation. So
it's kind of like a good analogy would be a financial advisor. So there's 2 modes for financial advisors. There's one where you give them your money and then somehow you can just simply blame them when they lose it. And they almost always do because it's not their money. Or you can ask them questions about how money works, what investments, what they would do maybe. And then you make your own choices with that information. And then you're more likely to make a better choice and be more accountable to that choice to make sure it happens than if you just completely, it's like outsourcing parenting to teachers as well, that you can't just let it go to your teachers to figure out how to raise your kids. You can maybe take their advice, but it's still on you to make a good adult, not your teacher, or not their teacher.
You mentioned something there that's I really like that, and now I'm losing it. I don't know what just happened in my brain.
It happens to me often.
I tell you what, it must be having kids, and needing sleep all the time. Man, it was totally good too. What in the heck? That's terrible.
Was it about the financial advisor part?
Yes, it was about the financial advisor part. So, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about too with the counsel, right? So, You get the financial advisor, and the financial advisor is telling you to do all this stuff. And what a lot of people don't do is say, all right, financial advisor, would you mind showing me your investments? Right? Let me see what you're invested in. Because if that financial advisor says, oh, well, I don't have a 401k, I don't have a IRA, I don't have, any of these investments. In my case, I don't have apartment buildings. Well, then why am I talking to you? Right? And it goes back to the same thing that I said earlier, right? Who is the best parent you know, right? I'm not going to go ask a non-parent how to raise a child, right? That doesn't make any sense. I need to ask a parent how to raise a child. Just like I would hope somebody's not going to come ask me how to raise a teenager. I might be able to have some insight based off of some research and different things, right? But I don't have any teenagers yet, so I don't know, right? I don't know. I could really be a terrible father with teenagers. Again, it goes back to the wise counsel, right? Having that counsel there, that asking those questions of that financial advisor, of that good parent, because you trust what they're saying, because they've been there and they do it.
Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about it much, but the one thing that's really created a network for me to have better dads now is working the muscle of talking to people. Every person I would talk to was that high school girl that was going to reject me and say no. And until I started just like saying to heck with it and talking to dads at the park, I really just was super uncomfortable talking to dads. So you have to be uncomfortable about talking to other people that have similar relationship. And for me, dads at the park was super easy, because if you're with a dad at the park, you already have some commonality to talk about, because you're a little bit better dad than maybe the dad that just sits and watches football on Sundays versus the dad that's at the park on Sunday. And like that really helped me get that network, and why I led to that community, because without that community and without that network, it's super lonely, and you're going to have those thoughts where you spank and you feel like a failure, and there's nobody there to invalidate it, to breathe life into you that you're a good dad. And if you don't have a kid that's smart enough to pause for a second and say, hey, daddy, I love you, thanks for being my dad, you're going to beat yourself down. And the echo chamber you mentioned, this is why I'm convinced that like veterans take their own life, because that echo chamber, voices never get canceled out by someone saying something, or they never put words to those thoughts. So they just get louder and louder, and they always come to one conclusion, that their family is better without them. When the moment you start talking about whatever you're thinking about, or like I was saying, the goal with every podcast is just to hear that one thought that says like, man, that guy just said what I was thinking. Maybe I'm not alone. And that little bit of crack starts to move a dad from feeling like he's super alone to, this voice inside my head's completely got it wrong, and I just need to start moving forward and being the best dad I can be.
And
so Adam, as
every dad's goal.
Yes. As we wrap up the interview, you've dropped too many pieces of advice to sum it up, but if I could challenge you to, what's one piece of advice you want to leave for other military dads out there? One piece of wisdom that you've learned with having kids 5 years on this earth?
Oh boy. If you can't tell, I like to talk, right? So it's tough for me to just come up with one thing and say one thing and be done with it. There is always tomorrow, right? You will never be a perfect dad. The things you did today can always be improved upon, and there's always time tomorrow. But at the same point, there's no better time than today, right? So always be trying to do something now, but don't think that just because you screwed it up now, that tomorrow's not going to come, right? Fix what you can, focus on what you can, reach out to somebody, but remember that you're raising a child. This takes years to do. 18 years, and hopefully they're out of the house and doing their thing, whether it's college, whether it's military, whether it's whatever it is they choose to do. But come back tomorrow. And a lot of people want to say, and I get it, right? Tomorrow's not promised, and it's not. There's no such thing as tomorrow being promised. But if you feel like a failure today, you could start new, right? You don't have to. I had an image that I posted on Facebook, which I'm almost never on, but there's a picture of this dad with this bag over his shoulder, and it had I forgot the words on it, but we'll say like life experiences or something, or troubles. I think it was something along those lines. And his kid, or what I am perceiving to be his child, walks up and be like, this would be a lot easier if you just let all that go. and they're like walking up a hill or something, right? This would be a lot easier if you just let all that go, right? Just because you screwed it up now doesn't mean you have to carry it to tomorrow. Just because you screwed it up now doesn't mean you have to carry it to 1 minute from now. You can stop. You can say, you know what? I screwed that up. I can fix it. I can move forward, and I can leave that baggage there. I don't need to pick that baggage back up. And you move on to tomorrow, and be a better dad every single day. Be a better dad.
And if I could put a cherry on top, no matter what you did wrong today, when you come home from work the next day, your kids will treat you as the hero that they did every day before. And we were always harder on ourselves, and we never stopped being the heroes to our kids, to their eyes, no matter how internal we judge what we did, whether we spanked, whether we yelled. They are extremely forgiving, and they are extremely forgetful. And they always just want you to be dead and walk in the door and give them the biggest hug and just let go whatever you're holding in from the day before. Like you said, just hit restart, and your kids will give you that grace that you need, but you first have to give it to yourself.
Yeah. If you don't let go of the baggage, they're going to find it. So just let it go. Enjoy.
So we didn't talk much about active duty passive income, but if people want to know more about it, Adam, where's the best place to go find more about it?
So active duty passive income. Yeah, it's, you can go to activedutypassiveincome.com. You can go on to Facebook, find us on there. Active duty passive income. You just look it up. We're a group of, military veterans, service members, spouses, any military affiliated folks come on and talk about, our main focus is real estate education. So, there are too many people out there that, get stuck in a rut. We have too many things at our hands to, fail at finances, and we try to help folks get involved in real estate to better their life and improve their passive income. So it's pretty exciting. We just broke 5,000 members in the Facebook group, and we're pretty excited to see where it's going.
It's a big number to pass by, and I'll give you one more nugget that I got from Grant Cardone about real estate. And he said that real estate is the only thing he trusts to leave a legacy after he leaves.
Yeah.
Because long after he leaves, the real estate will still. You did?
Yeah. We had him on our podcast. You know, he's also a big fan of the military service members and veterans and everything. And
he gives out like 100 either free membership to his 10X conferences, or it's like $100 or something.
So he has there's free access to his some of his business courses online, not the full gambit, but yeah, this last one in February down in Miami, he gave away free tickets to, and a couple of the ADPI guys. We all went down there and checked it out, and then we got him on our podcast shortly thereafter, and his wife. So,
and I really like that advice that like he uses real estate to protect his legacy, and that after he's gone, it's the one thing that will keep providing for him.
It'll keep going for sure, and you know it's an asset class that I absolutely love. So I look forward to bringing my kid to all the apartment buildings that I'm buying and showing him how this stuff works. So
hopefully he can move into one, not your basement.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, I'd rather.
He's going to ask for a deal, Daddy.
You know, if he wants to earn some money and invest in one of my apartment buildings, I'd be happy to have him as an investor in my apartment building.
If he's a smart investor, he'll try to throw in, I'll mow the yard for you so you don't have to pay someone else to do it. But will you knock off my contract?
Exactly. You put an extra couple bucks into the percentages for me, and I'll mow the lawn for you. So, good entrepreneur.
Well, Adam, I really appreciate you coming to the podcast, and I am 300% sure one of these nuggets brought a dad home tonight. And I'm really glad that you came on the podcast and that we had that chance to meet at that random lunch.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure. Again, being a dad is by far my favorite thing. I research it. I love it. I enjoy it. And I don't ever want to hear dads not making it home, not getting home. So any dad out there that ever wants to chat, I'm more than willing to chat with just about anybody. Well, anybody. So Adam at activedutypassiveincome.com. You can shoot me an email, and if you just want to talk about being a dad, I'd love it. So
awesome. Well, you enjoy the rest of your night, and I look forward to getting this episode out there.
Thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap. And thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.